Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our studies of First Kings. Here in First Kings chapter 1, as we're going to examine this morning, there are a number of things that we can pull out and that we can draw lessons from and information from. Now, where we want to hone in on today is a little bit more of the historical situation that brings about all of this plotting and counterplotting and so on and so forth that takes place. But let's just lay the setting for just a moment. David is now an old man. He has become very feeble, is the indication from the first few verses. You get the message that he cannot stay warm, and you have all of these different things. And here is this great warrior king who now all of a sudden can't hardly seem to get out of the bed. He is approaching the age of 70 at this time, which in this day and time and under these circumstances makes him an old man. It's not necessarily so much uncommon for somebody to reach that age in our day and time, but in this day and time, it was more of an uncommon feat. It was something that didn't always take place, especially with all of the wars and all of the battles and everything else that go on during this time. And so now you've come to the point where it is time to choose a successor. David has not died yet, but at the same time, you have a situation where David is not truly ruling over the country anymore either, because physically he's just not able to do it. And so you have, on the one hand, a son of David that is going to grab the bull by the horns and say, hey, I'm going to do this. And on the other hand, you're going to have another son of David who is going to be placed there, or he's going to try to be placed there by those around David. And so let's see what happens here in 1 Kings chapter 1. I want us to begin in verse 5 because Adonijah is going to lay forward this plot to take the kingdom for himself. Now, Adonijah is the son of David. If you go back to 2 Samuel chapter 3, you find that he is the fourth son of David. And yet it's believed by many that he is the oldest surviving son of David. We know two of the three that were older than Adonijah are already dead. Those are Amnon and Absalom. There is another, Kileab, he's called in First Chronicles Daniel, and we do not know what became of him. But it is surmised by many, because Adonijah is going to present himself as being the king, that Adonijah is the oldest surviving son. Now, there is not a law on the books, as it were, that the oldest son automatically becomes the next king. As a matter of fact, this is the first time that the kingship is actually going to transfer from father to son. If you recall, the first king at the end of 1 Samuel, Saul, is going to be killed. And while David and one of Saul's sons is going to have a civil war for several years over who is going to be the king or the next king, it is going to be the youngest son of Saul at this point, because all of the other sons of Saul are dead. And so there are no rules, there is no presentation as to how the lineage is supposed to move from one king to the next within a family. So Adonijah is just going to take the bull by the horns, and he's going to say, I will be king. And so he prepares himself chariots, and he prepares himself horsemen, and he prepares himself runners, and he starts gathering some of the military leaders and all of these various things. And nowhere in there does David tell him no, or why have you done this? Which goes to, in some ways, show the fact that David is out of the day-to-day ministrations of the kingdom. David doesn't know everything that's going on at this point. And so Adonijah's plot is moving forward. He has the backing of various ones like Abiathar and, believe it or not, Joab, who is the chief of the army. And he is moving himself into a position of power, and at this point, he's unopposed. But he is not going to go unopposed for long. Nathan and Bathsheba are going to counterplot, as it were. There's going to be a great deal of discussion in the central part of 1 Kings chapter 1 about David having stated that Solomon would be the heir, or that he would be the one to receive the kingdom. We don't know anything about these conversations. They're not recorded anywhere in Scripture. Some have come to the conclusion that they were playing on the age of David to try to convince him that he had said something that he hadn't said. I'm not convinced that that's the case. I'm convinced that these are things that were discussed. David simply didn't know what was going on around him. He was out of the day-to-day loop of events. And that with such, Nathan and Bathsheba are going to take it upon themselves to remind David of what he has previously said, so that David will step up and be able to do what needs to be done in order to make sure that the one that he has chosen becomes the next king, and not a self-proclaimed king like Adonijah is becoming. It is interesting to note that Nathan and Bathsheba are the ones who are working together on this. Remember that you have in 2 Samuel the adultery of David and Bathsheba that's going to lead to the death of Uriah, and Nathan is going to be the prophet who is going to confront David about these things. And yet Nathan is still serving before the king many years later. And it is going to be the case that Bathsheba and Nathan are going to put together this plan to bring these things before David, and Bathsheba is going to bring it first. And as she is going to go through and say these things, then Nathan is right on the heels of that going to come in and affirm everything that she has said. They're going to do this as a means of being able to show that multiple people know and understand and remember the things that are taking place. It's not a plot to overthrow David, and it's not simply a plot to get Bathsheba's son on the throne. It is seemingly, based upon all indications, an opportunity that they are trying to make for David's wishes to be fulfilled, because it is David's wishes for Solomon to be the next king. And so the plan is going to be put in place. And Solomon is going to be placed as king. He is going to be recognized as king before Adonijah gets enough of a foothold to be able to claim it for himself. Adonijah is then going to be afraid, and he is going to go into the Ark of the Covenant, and he is going to place himself, or rather to the place where the offerings are made, and he is going to grab onto the horns of the altar. This is going to be utilized as an idea of trying to save himself. He is afraid that Solomon is immediately going to come and kill him. And yet, Solomon, who is known as the King of Wisdom, is going to show wisdom and restraint in the way that he deals with these things here. Because when it's brought to Solomon as to where Adonijah is and what Adonijah has said, Solomon's response in verse 52 is, "If he proves himself a worthy man, not one hair of him shall fall to the earth. But if wickedness is found in him, he shall die." Solomon says what happens to Adonijah depends upon him, and it depends solely upon him, in the way that he reacts, in what he does, and the way that he handles things from this point forward. In other words, if he plots against me, I'll kill him. If he is one who proves himself a worthy man, that he is willing to take his position, that he is willing to work with me, that he is willing to be of a benefit to this kingdom, he said, he shall not one hair of him shall fall to the earth. I won't touch a hair on his head. The choice is entirely up to Adonijah. Solomon is going to immediately lay the groundwork for his kingdom being one that is focused on the actions of individuals. And so Solomon tells them to bring him down from the altar, and he comes and he falls before King Solomon, and Solomon says to him, "Go home." And Adonijah will. And so here in 1 Kings chapter 1, we see this intricate plotting that is going on. We see this race for succession that is going to take place before the king actually dies. And Solomon is going to get the leg up because he has the vote of David himself. These are some of the things that I found in 1 Kings chapter 1. I hope they're things that are helpful to you, and I hope that you find them beneficial. Next time we'll come back and we'll begin examining 1 Kings chapter 2. But until then, have a great day.